They said he was just another lost soul on the street, a man with no name, no past, and no place to call home. But the first time I saw him, sitting quietly under the flickering street light with eyes full of sadness and something unspoken, I felt a pull I couldn't explain. I didn't know his story. I didn't even know if he remembered it himself. All I knew was, something in him was broken, and somehow, I wanted to be the one to put the pieces back together. The night I met him, the rain was relentless, cold needles falling from the sky, soaking everything in their path. I had just finished my shift at the small flower shop where I worked, and was rushing home with my umbrella flipping inside out from the wind. My apartment wasn't far, just a 15-minute walk. But that night felt endless. As I turned the corner near the old subway entrance, long abandoned and crumbling, I saw him. He was crouched under the concrete awning, drenched from head to toe. His clothes were tattered, his shoes worn to threads. He had no bag, no belongings, nothing that told me who he was. But what struck me the most was his face, not because he was handsome, though he was in a rugged, unkempt kind of way, but because his eyes looked so empty, like he didn't know where he was or who he was. I hesitated. 1,000 warnings rushed through my mind: don't talk to strangers, don't invite trouble. But something made me stop. Maybe it was the way he shivered uncontrollably, or the way he stared at the puddle in front of him as if he expected it to speak. I stepped closer. "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't answer. He didn't even look up. I knelt down slowly, careful not to scare him. "Do you need help? Somewhere to go?" His lips moved slightly, but no words came out. Just a hoarse sound, like someone who hadn't spoken in days or weeks. I reached into my tote bag and pulled out a wrapped sandwich I had planned to eat for dinner. "Here. It's not much, but it's warm." He looked at the sandwich as if it was some foreign object, but then, very slowly, took it with trembling hands. "Thank you," he whispered. That was the first thing he said to me. I still remember his voice. Low, rough, uncertain. "Do you have a name?" I asked gently. He shook his head. I don't remember." Something cracked inside me at that moment. He wasn't just homeless. He wasn't just hungry. He was lost, truly lost, in the cruelest way imaginable. I offered him my umbrella. "Come with me. You need to get out of this rain." He hesitated again, looking past me like he was searching for permission from a memory that no longer existed. Then, finally, he nodded. That night, I took a complete stranger home. My apartment wasn't much, just a modest one-bedroom tucked above a corner bakery. The kind of place that always smelled like warm bread and sugar in the mornings. But to someone like him, soaked and shivering, it must have felt like a palace. He didn't say a word when we walked in. His eyes scanned the small living room, the neatly folded blanket on the couch, the soft yellow lights. I handed him a towel and a fresh t-shirt, an oversized one I usually wore for sleeping, and pointed toward the bathroom. "You can take a warm shower," I said gently. "I'll leave some clothes outside the door." He looked at me again with that lost, uncertain gaze. I don't want to be trouble." "You're not," I replied. "You're cold and hurt. That's not trouble." He stared at me for a long second before finally nodding. I closed the bathroom door behind him and leaned my back against it, exhaling the breath I didn't know I was holding. What was I doing? Bringing a stranger into my home, a man who couldn't even remember his own name? But something in me refused to turn him away. It wasn't pity. It was deeper. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his hair was wet but no longer matted. He wore the grey hoodie and sweatpants I'd left outside, both a little big, but clean and warm. He looked different. Still a mystery. Still hollow in the eyes, but human. I made tea, set out another sandwich. We sat at my small dining table, and for a while, said nothing. Then I asked, "Do you remember anything at all?" He shook his head. "Just flashes, sounds, screams, then pain. a lot of pain. And waking up in the cold. My throat tightened. Maybe you were in an accident, he nodded slowly. I think so. My head. Sometimes it throbs. But no matter how hard I try, there's just darkness. I watched him rub his temples. His hands were calloused. But not dirty anymore. Just tired. You'll remember. I told him quietly. Your memory will come back. He didn't look convinced. But he did manage a faint smile, the first one. Until then. I added. You'll need a name. He blinked. A name? Something to call you. We can't just go with Hey You forever. He thought for a second. You pick. I paused. Then smiled. How about Liam? He repeated it under his breath, testing how it felt in his mouth. Liam. It means strong-willed warrior, I said, trying to lighten the mood. He smiled again. More genuine this time. Then I hope I can live up to it. That night, I set up the couch for him with extra pillows and a thick quilt. As I turned off the lights and walked into my room, I glanced back at him. He was already asleep. His face peaceful in a way that made me ache. I didn't know it then. But that moment was the beginning of everything. The days that followed felt like something out of a strange, quiet dream. Liam stayed. Not because I asked him to, but because he had nowhere else to go, and because something about my presence seemed to calm him. He slept on my couch, helped me carry groceries, even swept the hallway without being asked. He wasn't a burden. If anything, it felt like he was trying to repay me in every way he could. Even if he didn't remember who he was. Each morning, I'd make coffee, and we'd sit by the window watching people pass by below. Liam never said much, but he always watched them, couples holding hands, kids running to school, businessmen on phones. I could see the longing in his eyes, like he was trying to recognize someone. Or maybe just find a reflection of the life he lost. One morning, I found him standing in front of the mirror in the hallway, shirtless, staring at the long, pale scar that ran from behind his left ear down to the base of his neck. That's where the pain starts, he said softly when he noticed me. I walked up slowly. Do you think it's from the accident? He nodded. Must be. But I don't remember the crash. Just a loud sound. Then silence. And waking up on the street. Have you gone to the hospital? I asked. He shook his head. I was afraid. I had no ID. No name. What would I say, that I just woke up and forgot everything? But maybe they could have helped. I didn't want to be locked away. He interrupted gently. Or seen as crazy. I didn't argue. Deep down, I understood. Later that day, while folding laundry, I noticed the way Liam held one of my books, not just reading, but analyzing it. He traced his fingers over the words like someone who once spent hours studying. He read fast. Too fast for a man who had been on the streets for weeks. What do you think you used to do? I asked him. He looked up. Something with thinking, planning, maybe teaching, or business? I'm not sure. But sometimes I dream of rooms with glass walls and men in suits. He paused. And a voice. A woman's voice. Angry. Crying. My chest tightened. Do you know who she is? He shook his head. But I could see the pain in his eyes. I feel like I should. But every time I get close, it slips away. That night, as I prepared dinner, Liam stood beside me in the kitchen, helping chop vegetables. We worked in comfortable silence until he suddenly turned and asked, "Why are you helping me, Claire?" I froze. No one had asked me that, not even myself. I turned the stove off and looked at him. Because when I found you, something in your eyes told me you were lost. And I know how that feels. You've been lost too? For most of my life, I admitted. But helping you, it makes me feel like I've finally found something worth holding on to. We stood there, just the two of us, surrounded by warmth and flickering shadows. Liam looked at me for a long time, not with the blank stare of a man without memories, but with the quiet intensity of someone who was slowly learning how to feel again. "Then maybe," he said softly, "we're both helping each other." And just like that, something shifted. Not in a dramatic way. Not with fireworks or confessions, but in the small space between two hearts learning how to beat again. Weeks passed. And slowly, a rhythm settled between us, an unspoken harmony of shared mornings and quiet evenings. Liam became part of my life without ever asking to. He cooked dinner some nights, fixed the broken hinge on my kitchen cabinet, and once even painted over the water-stained corner of my ceiling when I wasn't home. He still didn't remember who he was, but he was starting to build someone new in the meantime. The neighborhood began to notice him too. Mrs. Lou, my elderly neighbor, started waving at him every morning from her balcony. The kids across the street began calling him Mr. Liam and ran to him for help with their paper airplanes. Even my boss at the flower shop, who rarely liked anyone, once commented, "That man's got good energy. Calms a room." But despite the peace, I couldn't help but notice the little cracks beneath Liam's surface. The way he flinched at the sound of sirens. The way he sometimes gripped his head in the middle of the night, whispering, "Make it stop," as though reliving something terrible. And then there were the dreams. He never spoke of them in detail, but I knew. He'd wake up gasping, drenched in sweat, sometimes calling out names that made no sense: Jordan, the board, or once, Rebecca. Each time, I'd sit beside him, whispering softly, holding his hand until his breath calmed and he drifted back to sleep. Sometimes he clung to my fingers like they were the only thing tethering him to the present. One evening, while we were folding laundry together, he turned to me suddenly. "I want to try," he said. "Try what?" "To find out who I am. Really. Maybe go to the police. Or get a CT scan. Something." I looked at him for a long moment. "Are you sure? You're not afraid anymore?" He gave a slow nod. "I'm still afraid. But not of remembering. I'm afraid that if I don't, I'll never deserve the life you've given me." My heart twisted. "You don't have to deserve it, Liam. You're already, I want to," he interrupted softly, "for you." And that's when I realized, he wasn't just healing. He was falling. So was I. But we were careful. Neither of us dared say it out loud. The words would make it real. And reality was fragile. He could remember everything tomorrow and walk out of my life with no explanation. And still, every morning when I woke up and heard the kettle whistle, every time I found a mug of coffee already waiting on the table, I felt it, that quiet, dangerous hope. A few days later, we visited a free clinic. The doctor, a kind woman named Dr. Grant, listened carefully as Liam explained what little he knew. She scheduled him for a scan. Said they'd look for old injuries, trauma, anything that might explain the memory loss. After we left, we walked in silence for a long time. Then Liam said, "What if I remember something bad?" I glanced at him. "Then you'll face it. And I'll be right there." He looked at me then, really looked, like he was trying to memorize my face in case it was the last time he'd see it through the eyes of this version of himself. "I'm not sure what I did to deserve you," he whispered. "You got lost," I replied, "and I happened to be the one who found you." He smiled at that. Not the soft, broken smile of before, but one filled with something new. Something almost like love. The results from the scan came a week later. Dr. Grant called and said everything looked as expected for someone who had suffered trauma to the head, bruising in areas linked to memory, consistent with a serious accident. But no tumors. No degenerative disease. Just time and trauma, locking parts of his past behind a thick, invisible wall. "It may come back slowly," she told us, "or it may never return at all. But if it does, expect it in fragments. And sometimes, the truth may not be easy." We thanked her and left the clinic. Outside, Liam sat down on a low brick wall, running his hands through his hair. His expression was unreadable. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He stared at his hands. I was hoping there would be a clear answer. Something I could fight, fix, overcome. But it's just waiting. We're not doing nothing, I said gently, sitting beside him. We're living. That's something. He gave a small nod, then reached for my hand. That was the first time he held it without trembling. That night, I woke up to the sound of a crash. I rushed into the living room and found Liam kneeling on the floor, panting. One of the framed photos on the shelf had fallen and shattered. But he wasn't looking at the broken glass. He was clutching his head, whispering, "Cambridge. Evan. Silver Ridge. No. No, wait, Rebecca." I knelt down. "Liam, hey, what's happening?" His eyes darted to mine. Wild. Frantic. Like he was drowning. I saw her. A woman. In a red dress. She was crying. Then. A steering wheel. Blood. And. A name, Evan. "Do you think that's your name?" He nodded slowly, then shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe." It was so fast. It slipped again. But I saw something change in his eyes that night. Recognition. Over the next few days, the flashes came more frequently. He'd suddenly go quiet, staring at nothing. Then whisper a name or a place. Silver Ridge, Cambridge, Rebecca. He began writing them down in a notebook. Piece by piece. A puzzle was forming, still scattered, still blurred at the edges, but real. And then, one morning, he didn't come back from the store. I waited. 15 minutes. 30. An hour. Panic began to rise in my chest. I called his phone, the cheap one I had helped him buy, but it rang and rang with no answer. I threw on my coat and ran through the neighborhood. I checked the bakery, the corner shop, even the park bench he liked. Then, I found him, standing frozen outside a bookstore on 6th Street. His hands pressed against the glass. Inside, on display, was a book. Evan Hale, business titan, philanthropist, vanished without a trace. My heart nearly stopped. I walked up beside him. "Is that you?" His face was pale. "I think so. It's the name. It matches the vision. I remember the boardroom now. Suits. Deals. I remember being someone important." He turned to me, eyes wide, terrified. "Claire, what if I was a bad man? What if I was cold, ruthless? What if I had a wife?" "Stop," I whispered, placing my hand on his chest. "Whatever you were, it's not who you are now. Not to me." He closed his eyes, pressing his forehead to mine. "But if I remember everything, I might lose you." "You won't," I said, though my voice trembled. "Even if you remember 1,000 things, just don't forget me." He opened his eyes then, and in them, I saw something unspoken, something real. He remembered something, and I feared it would change everything. The following days were a whirlwind, for both of us. Liam, or Evan, as he now believed himself to be, began to change. Subtly at first. His posture straightened. His gaze sharpened. He started dressing with more care. Even speaking differently, more precise, more commanding. And yet, every time he looked at me, he softened. He hadn't left. He still slept on the couch. Still made tea in the mornings. Still smiled when I laughed at my own bad jokes. But there was a wall now. Not one he built deliberately, but one born from a storm of returning memories and painful truths. I saw him sit for hours, reading articles on his phone, piecing together the mystery of his life from news clippings and social media. The story was everywhere once we started looking. Evan Hale, heir to Hale Industries, missing after high-speed crash on the Silveridge Highway. Wife Rebecca Hale speaks out, "I still believe he's alive." $5 million reward offered for any information on Evan Hale's whereabouts. There it was. His name. His face. His life. Without me. I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I wanted him to stay with me, when he had a wife out there grieving him. That I wanted him to forget again, just so he'd stay in my world. Selfish thoughts, but real. One evening, I found him sitting at the window, the notebook of memories open in his lap. "I remember her now," he said quietly. "Rebecca." I braced myself. She was elegant, Smart. But cold. We fought a lot. About the company. About legacy. About everything. She didn't love me. Not really. And he paused. Then looked at me. I don't think I loved her either. That admission stunned me. I think I married her because it made sense on paper. Because that's what people like me did. Build empires. Marry the right partner. Create a perfect image. He looked down at his hands. But I don't remember ever being happy. I sat beside him. Close. But not touching. You don't owe me an explanation, I said softly. You have a life to go back to now. A real identity. You're someone powerful. Someone with a family. A future. He turned toward me. Eyes blazing. You're my future, Claire. That made my breath catch. I don't care about the empire, he said. I don't care about the board. Or the business. Or even the money. When I was lying in the street, dying in the rain, I didn't think of my company. I didn't think of Rebecca. His voice dropped to a whisper. I thought of warmth. A voice. A gentle hand offering me a sandwich. I thought of you. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. But you have to go back, I said. Even if it's just to finish your story. To face what happened. I will, he said. I need to. But I'm not leaving you behind. He reached for my hand. I'm not Liam anymore. And I'm not the man I used to be. Either. I'm someone new. Someone better. Because of you. That night. We held each other, no words. No promises. Just the kind of silence that says everything. And the next morning, Evan Hale bought a train ticket back to the city that once belonged to him, with me sitting quietly by his side. The city skyline loomed like a ghost of a life long abandoned. As the train pulled into the station, Evan sat still. Eyes fixed on the window. Knuckles white against his thighs. I could see the war playing out in his mind, memory versus emotion. Past versus present. He turned to me and whispered, "What if they don't believe it's really me?" I reached for his hand. "Then we remind them." A town car was already waiting outside the station. He didn't arrange it. Someone had been watching. The driver, a grey-haired man in a sharp black suit, stepped out and froze when he saw Evan. "Sir." Evan's jaw clenched. "Do I know you?" "I'm Robert. Your personal driver for 10 years, sir." His voice trembled. "God. We thought you were dead." Evan glanced at me. And for a split second, he looked like that lost man on the street again. Robert opened the door without another word. The mansion was even more overwhelming. A towering estate of marble and glass. Gated and pristine. I felt like I was stepping into a painting. Too perfect. Too unreal. The front door swung open before we even reached it. There she was, Rebecca. Tall. Immaculate. A red dress that fit too well. Like it was tailored around her coldness. She took one step forward. Heels echoing against the marble floor. "Evan?" Her voice cracked. Evan didn't move. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. And for a moment, real emotion flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone. "You've been gone for 6 months. You left everything behind. You crashed my car. Vanished into the woods. And now you just walk in with her?" Her eyes flicked to me like I was a mosquito she was considering swatting. Evan stepped in front of me. Protective. Unyielding. "I lost my memory," he said. "I've only just begun to remember. Claire found me. Took care of me. While everyone else moved on." Rebecca's lips curled. "You think you can just step back into Hale Industries after vanishing with no explanation?" "I don't want Hale Industries," Evan replied. "I want the truth. About who I was. About what happened. And after that, I want to leave." Rebecca's face went pale. "You want to leave your own legacy?" Evan's voice was calm. Clear. "It was never mine. Not really. I inherited a name. A company. A chain of cold decisions. But none of it ever made me feel alive. Until I met her." She looked at me again. And this time, I didn't shrink back. She didn't scream. Or cry. She simply said, "You always did fall for strays." That night, Evan stayed in one of the guest rooms. refusing to sleep in their bedroom. I stayed in a hotel nearby. Though he called me 3 times just to hear my voice. The next morning, he requested access to the Hale archives, files, contracts, personal footage, anything that might fill in the blanks. He reviewed surveillance from the night of the crash. And then he saw it, the argument, Rebecca yelling in the driveway, Evan getting into the driver's seat, alone. A cut to a camera catching her standing in the doorway, smiling, not worried, not chasing him, smiling. She wanted me to crash, he said that night. His voice hollow. Maybe not to die, but to disappear. He wasn't angry, just sad. She didn't love me. She just loved the name. He looked at me. You loved me when I didn't even have one. And just like that, he kissed me. Not out of confusion, not out of gratitude, out of knowing. The man in the mirror was Evan Hale. But the heart, it belonged to Liam, to the man I found under the rain. The days that followed were a quiet storm. Evan, or rather, Liam, as I still called him in the privacy of our conversations, began settling the pieces of his past like a puzzle he no longer wished to complete. He met with lawyers, board members, family advisors, all shocked to see him alive, most concerned only with what he planned to do with the company. I'm leaving it all behind, he told them. You're Hale Industries, one of the executives argued. You can't just disappear. I already did, he said calmly. And the world kept turning. The company survived. Maybe it's time I choose a life that's actually mine. There were headlines, of course, speculation, whispers about his new woman. Photos of us surfaced, me walking beside him in jeans and a flower shop apron, worlds away from the power suits of Hale legacy. They called me everything from his mysterious savior to the girl who ruined the Hale empire. I didn't care. He did, for a while. But then one morning, while sipping coffee on the balcony of the mansion he no longer wanted, he turned to me and said, "Let's go." Go where? I asked. Away. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows my name. Are you sure? He nodded. I've had everything. And none of it ever felt as real as the tiny apartment of yours, with the kettle whistling and the cracked windows. We left that afternoon. No press conference. No farewell. He signed papers transferring control of Hale Industries to a trusted partner. He gave Rebecca what she wanted, shares, money, distance. She didn't protest. She had already moved on, or maybe she'd never really needed him in the first place. And then, for the first time in months, we were free. We moved into a cottage by the coast. It was small, but full of light, sea breeze through the curtains, lemon trees in the backyard, sand between our toes each morning. He went back to painting, something he discovered he had a hidden talent for. I returned to arranging flowers, eventually opening a tiny floral studio in the nearby village. And we laughed. God, we laughed so much. Sometimes, when the wind was strong, he'd stand at the edge of the cliff and scream, "I am not Evan Hale." And I'd laugh until my stomach hurt. But some nights were still haunted. He'd wake up gasping, reaching for me in the dark. The scars on his body might have healed, but the ones in his memory, they pulsed. I'd hold him close and remind him, "You're here. You're loved. You're real." And one evening, as we walked hand in hand down the shore, he stopped suddenly, turned to me, and said, "Marry me." I blinked. "What?" "I don't have a ring yet," he said breathlessly, "or a perfect plan. I can't imagine any day from now without waking up next to you. Not as Liam. Not as Evan. Just as me. The man who loves you." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes. 1,000 times." We didn't have a big wedding. Just a quiet ceremony on the beach, barefoot in the sand, with salty wind in our hair and the sea as our witness. He wrote his own vows. Simple, raw, unforgettable. "You found me when I was no one, and loved me back to life. Today, I promise, I will never forget again." And when he kissed me, I knew, the man I met in the rain was gone. But the love we built, that stayed forever. Years passed. But I never forgot the first time I saw him, hunched beneath the streetlight, soaked and trembling. His eyes void of memory but full of unspoken pain. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the kettle starts to whistle, I still see that version of him in my mind. And I smile, because I didn't just find a man that night. I found a future. We never went back to the city. Not even once. Evan Hale faded from the public eye like a myth. Eventually, the news stopped talking. The tabloids found new obsessions. Hale Industries carried on. As businesses do. Life moved forward. So did we. He now spends most mornings painting in the sunroom. Barefoot. Coffee in hand. His work isn't about success or legacy, it's expression. Emotion. Healing. I run the floral studio in the village. People come from neighboring towns just to buy our wild sea lavender bouquets. They call me the girl who grows color with her hands. I never correct them. They're right. In a way. We don't talk much about the past, but we do talk about the rain, about the night we met. The sandwich. The silence. The warmth. He tells me that even when he didn't know who he was, something about my voice, my presence, made him feel like he was safe. Like he belonged somewhere. Even if he didn't know why. We built a life slowly. Gently. A quiet miracle of two broken people choosing each other every day. He never asked to be found. And I never meant to fall in love with a stranger. But the universe didn't ask for permission. It simply gave me a man with no name. And let me help him write a new one. Now, when people ask who he is, I smile and say, he's the man I found on the street. And the love I never thought I deserved. And every night, when he wraps his arms around me, I know, with a certainty deeper than memory, that no matter what he was before, he is mine now. And I am his.